And welcome. Tonight is the June Trails and Open Space Coalition Trail Mixer. And tonight we are going to be talking about trail safety and all of the good tips you can do to stay safe on our urban trails. So before we get started tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to introduce the TOSC staff that's with us here tonight. So as I call out everybody, if you can turn on your camera. First off, we have Alan Beauchamp. He is our community engagement person. Then we have Michael Rigney, who is the GIS coordinator and Ring the Peak guru. We have Shri Jaj, who is the office manager. And we also have Susan Davies, who is our executive director. And we have Beth, who is our development person. So this is Team TOSC. And tonight, we're going to be talking to three wonderful speakers who have all different wisdom and advice to share about how to stay safe on trails. So we'll get to all of them real shortly. First off, we're going to start with a question. So between our speakers tonight, we have different polls that you all can use to let us know about how you think and feel. So the first question that we have tonight is, how safe do you feel on urban trails? So 10 would be completely safe. You don't worry at all. And 1 is that you don't feel safe at all, that you never feel safe at all on the trails. So I'll give you guys a few seconds to fill this out. And so far it's, we had a few 7s and 3s, so it's kind of spread out really well. So I'll give it a few more seconds. That's interesting. So 7 was the winner over on that one. So thank you guys. So you guys feel pretty good on the trails, but still aware of issues that are taking place out there. So before we get started with our first speaker tonight, we want you to ask as many questions as you want. If you feel the need to ask a question, down at the bottom of the screen, there is a Q&A section. And if you write in a question in there, we will note that and then ask the speakers after their presentations those questions. So thank you guys again for logging in tonight. We're gonna have a wonderful night. We're scheduled to go for about an hour. And our first speaker is Officer Wesley Wilkerson from CSPD. He is gonna talk to us about theft prevention. So Wesley, whenever you're ready, you can turn on your screen, and we're excited to hear from you.
Awesome. Thank you, Aaron, and thanks for having me on here tonight. As Aaron mentioned, I am Officer Wilkerson. I am the Crime Prevention Officer for the Gold Hill Division of CSPD. Gold Hill Division being located on West Moreno Avenue, just off 8th Street. That puts us on the west side. Quite possibly the most diverse division in CSPD. We have downtown businesses. We have our trail system network. We have our open space and city parks. And then, of course, we have residences throughout Colorado City and the Broadmoor and Cheyenne Bluffs area. Being such a diverse area, I've really taken on a personal role in dealing with the parks and park safety and parks issues as they come up from our citizens and concerns from park staff. You know, I'm not telling a secret here if I tell people, you know, our trails, our trailheads are sometimes known for vehicle break-in locations. It's just a fact of the matter. But we also put a lot of the onus on the citizens because a lot of that can be prevented. I like to tell visitors to our city, if you don't need it, don't take it to the trailhead. You don't need that HP laptop sitting in your vehicle while you're hiking Bellagio Peak. It's only an attractant to our criminal element within the city. And they know that our trailheads and our parks are locations they can go to get valuables from people. If anybody's been in Garden of the Gods recently, one of my most favorite locations, I drive through it at least once a week while on duty, sometimes multiple times. Was there Sunday for a trail race or a race series, 10 miles, 10K, and a 10K trail. And the number of people from out of town was mind-boggling. And I just couldn't help but see some of the poor decisions being made by a lot of the park goers in leaving valuables in the back of a pickup truck or fully exposed in their vehicle's interior to where I could actually look inside and see that cell phone charging on the center console. So I'm here to remind everybody, if you take one thing away today, just remember, if you don't need it, don't take it to the trailhead. Don't take it to our parks and our open spaces. It's just leaving open that possibility that it could be taken from your vehicle. When it comes to our actual parks, I had the privilege of doing a podcast recently. It was actually back in November, December timeframe for trail safety and the misperception that our trails were unsafe. I saw everybody voted as most majority were a 7. I actually, if I had the ability, I was locked out of that poll question, I probably would have put an 8 or 9. But that's probably because I'm more familiar with what occurs on our trail system. There are incidents that occur. We can't get away from that. But those are national. That's not just isolated to the Colorado Springs and the Front Range area. Personal awareness is going to be your biggest thing when you're enjoying any outdoor activity in Colorado. Not only personal awareness and from a personal safety standpoint of harm coming to you from someone who wants to do harm to you, but that personal safety that my counterparts will get into shortly on animals and the threats that they potentially pose to individuals enjoying our beautiful surroundings here. One of the things I really wanted to talk about, and this was something near and dear to my heart, and Aaron invited me on for this, is the sudden rash that we've seen since COVID of bicycle thefts that are occurring nationally, not just here in Colorado Springs. And it's something that caught us off guard. We expected people during COVID, during the lockdown, to start to enjoy the outdoors more. And I was witness to that myself. When I was out on trail runs or on rides or on hikes with my dogs, I saw people who you could tell they had never been outside in the past 12 months, and they were finally enjoying everything that we have to offer in this beautiful state. And it made me happy. It made me excited to see people rediscovering the outdoors. But along with that came a huge surge in the purchase and the use of new hiking and recreational equipment to include bicycles. That surge in purchases led to a shortage nationally of product available to the consumer. And our criminal element saw an opportunity and they took it. It was very unfortunate that we had a very large spike last year, 2020, in bicycle thefts, in particular high-end models. Think of things such as carbon fibers, frames, and such. Mostly bicycles ranging in the $5,000 to $10,000 range. And they weren't just being stolen to be utilized. They were being stolen and transported across state lines for sale on places like Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, and others. I do have a graphic I will try to share. Bear with me while I try to do it. I don't know if it's going to allow me. The interesting part that we saw was how many citizens did not have their bicycle serial number written down anywhere. Some of the unfortunate statistics that come out of our bicycle thefts are that roughly half were defeated by a simple cheap cable lock, or they weren't secured at all, as in half the bicycles were just there for the taking. I think the national average was about, earlier this year, it was about 2 million bicycles stolen in North America every year. 2 million. It's mind-blowing. So I broke that down last year when I come up with my stats, and it equated to about 1 every 30 seconds. And I would say that's probably a little higher here in Colorado, due to the population that enjoys our outdoors on a bicycle. Here in Colorado Springs, we only recover about 1% of stolen bicycles. The national average is actually higher, it's about 5%. We don't know why, and that was an anomaly that we sat down with our analyst and tried to figure out. Why are we only recovering 1%? And a lot of it came down to the fact that only 20% of owners had their serial number. So all we had to go off of was a simple description of the bicycle, maybe some unique colors or features that were added. And to tell you the truth, that's one of the first things that people take off of it, are those unique markings, those unique things. Only about 1 in 5 bicycles are actually reported as stolen to police nationally. The sad number is about 7% of victims completely quit cycling. They never purchase a bicycle again. 7% gone, out of the sport, out of the recreation. Think of it almost like a PTSD of being a victim of that theft. It's a violation. We see the same thing from a lot of car theft victims too. They don't want to purchase a new car. They just don't want to get into it. About 25% of people who are bike theft victims, they just ride less. They don't want to take the chance. So the person who used to commute to work, which is what we're pushing here, we're trying to really push on those bicycle lanes and utilization of means of transportation other than vehicles. A quarter of the people just ride less. So that person that rode to work every day, they don't want to ride to work anymore because they don't want their bike stolen. Their new purchase. Again, here in Colorado Springs, we saw a huge surge in expensive bikes that were being targeted, and they were cutting through cable locks. They were taking the bicycle frame, the actual bike rack mechanism that's bolted to the concrete foundation. They were actually removing those to get to the bike and to remove the locking mechanism. So I would like to say that you lock your bike, it's safe, and we found out last year that's not the case. Ultimately, you need to have eyes on it. If you're going to be eating at a restaurant, you lock it up. If you park it somewhere near a park, at least park it in a visible area, and try to stay away from those cable locks. I'm guilty of this because cable locks are very convenient because you can throw it in your bag. U-locks, the actual sturdy U-shaped lock that mounts from the frame to a secure location, are truly the best means of preventing bicycle theft. Some things to remember, and this can go for anything that occurs as far as theft. Make sure you have serial numbers for valuable items written down somewhere. Make sure things are documented. I can't tell you how many pieces of jewelry I've taken stolen reports for, where it's a simple descriptor of what the jewelry looks like, and it's an heirloom item. It's been in a family for 2 or 3 generations, and I just think to myself, I'm like, there has to be a picture somewhere of someone wearing this. So take photos of those valuable items. Document that serial number in multiple locations. I've even heard suggestions of adding your expensive bike or your expensive recreational equipment, maybe a kayak or stand-up paddleboard. Add that to your insurance policy as a means of protecting that investment. Maybe you won't be out so much money to replace it. Again, get a U-lock. Those cables are just way too easy to cut. Be sure to lock your bike when not in use. Even if you live in an apartment or a condo style structure where you keep your bicycle on a balcony, which a lot of people do, especially in our downtown area, those are not necessarily always secure. There are means of getting access into the building or up to the second floor. And speaking of, in those secure locations, those locker locations where bicycle storage might be, we've seen some very creative means of accessing that after hours. So always lock it when not in use. Don't just leave it, to chance that it's going to be parked there next time you come back. Try to use those secure bike racks that you find. It's a lot of construction occurring downtown. I'll mention the new switchback soccer stadium has multiple bike racks around the exterior that allow, in their design, they allow for multiple bikes to be walked to them. And most importantly, if you are a victim, if you have any kind of theft occur to you, or any kind of incident occur to you while enjoying our beautiful open spaces, you've got to report that to law enforcement in a timely manner. Use social media maybe to post the incident, but you've got to remember to report it to law enforcement. That's the key here. We are an intelligence-led policing agency as of about 2 years ago, meaning that we operate off of data that comes in to the department. If it's not reported, it didn't happen, and we can't allocate those resources that are needed. Again, social media is a great tool for spreading information. It can also, unfortunately, be kind of a hindrance when it comes to law enforcement activities. We've seen a rise in underreporting on social media. Underreporting being someone who posts on Ring or Nextdoor, the porch pirate that has taken all their Amazon packages, but they forget to call the police and actually report the incident. That is something we're aware of, and we're trying to get ahead of that. We posted a few public safety and public service announcements on social media regarding that topic. And here's a kicker. If you spot your bike, maybe on Craigslist or Facebook, or if you spot something that's stolen from you while at a trailhead, let's not try to engage that potential suspect. Report that to law enforcement. That is very unique, and it's a tip. It's an investigative means to getting your property back that we can manipulate. So if you see it, don't try to recover it yourself. Especially if you find it parked downtown, it might not be your bike. It could be somebody else's, and that would have 2 victims. And again, I just want to thank Aaron and everybody for having me on. I know I've taken a few minutes here, and I know we have a few other guests that would like to mention a few other things and talk about some other discussions. Aaron, I was trying to monitor the chat. I don't know if we all have. Oh, it's just from the panelists. Sorry.
I will monitor that chat for you. I'm Beth, and I've been taking down a bunch of questions that people have been PMing us.
All right.
So I have about 4 or 5 questions. Maybe some of them I think you might have already answered. One question was, how often are thieves or vandals caught, whether it's in the act or after the fact, after an investigation?
That's a great question. And our success rate on catching someone in the act, especially at a trailhead, is pretty low. And we're seeing a rise in the smash and grabs. Before, it was a lot of unlocked cars, but the trailheads in specific, now I'm not talking about residential areas, trailheads are the prime locations for a smash and grab, where someone's going to break a window, reach in and get what they want. That dirty, that gym bag from Vasa Fitness full of dirty socks that's been sitting in the backseat of your car for 4 weeks that you keep forgetting to take inside, to a thief could be a bag full of $1 million. And they're going to smash your window, and they're going to take your dirty socks, and then you're going to be out a window. And our return on investment on catching those people in the act is very, very small. And it's honestly a staffing issue. We just do not have enough cops to cover not only the calls that we receive on a daily basis, but our massive trail and open space system that we have in the city. And I'll hit on one more point. What was the second part of that?
You answered the whole
How
thing.
we do catch them. How we do catch them is the subsequent criminal acts they commit. So your phone or your wallet is stolen, or your purse is stolen. The subsequent frauds that might occur with the credit cards or checks in that purse over the course of the next few days and weeks and months, that's what gets us our suspects. That's what finds us our leads, because those are typically going to be on video surveillance at those stores such as Walgreens, Kroger, King Soopers, whatever. But our actually catching people in the act, it's hard. It's just not, we don't have parks police here. Dang it. I really wish we did. I really, really wish we had parks police. So I think at one time, maybe 20 years ago, we did. So let's talk about staffing. So last year during the pandemic, we were very fortunate with the schools being closed. All of our school resource officers were reallocated to the parks to actually conduct park patrol. we have lost a lot of officers in our department over the past year for various reasons. And because of staffing, those school resource officers are not going to be in our parks as much this summer as they normally would be in an off cycle from school, from the semesters. So it's on, trust me, it's on our mind. We got to figure out a way to solve this. We really need, everybody needs to be a sensor. I say in the Army, we said every soldier is a sensor. And I would say the same thing about our systems. Everybody's a sensor. If you see something that's not right, it's not right. No, it's not being nosy. It's not being, mind your own business. If you see something that just doesn't seem right, somebody scoping out a car, call it in. Better yet, take a photo.
Good idea.
People will take an Instagram photo of their breakfast, but they won't video the person breaking into the car next to theirs. And it tickles me sometimes when I think about that. I'm like, okay, you had ham and eggs for breakfast, but you didn't video the porch fire that you saw. Come on, people. Let's use our cameras. Let's use our phones and get some evidence.
That's great advice. You answered another question that just popped up, so I'll move on to the next one. And I think that's the last one that we haven't really gotten to. You mentioned that you've talked a lot about thefts of bikes or items out of cars. Is there a concern with an increase of people on the trails for user conflicts or any kind of violent crime?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. And it goes back to the whole new users, right? A lot of new users on the trails over the past year who normally wouldn't be outside. They're enjoying it finally for the first time. Trail etiquette. Those of us who have been around and been using the trail system, we know it like it's second nature. But for a lot of new users, they just don't know the trail etiquette. They don't know, to pass on the left. The certain traffic has the right of way, that bicycles and horses, the way that the yield system works. They just don't get that. And it has caused some conflict, but nothing to the extent where law enforcement has had to get involved with that. If anything, I would say that the increase in people using our trail systems has kind of made it a bit safer, because there's no longer isolated areas on our trails where you're alone for 10 to 15 minutes at a time. And I've noticed that, where places where I knew I wouldn't see anybody for a long time, I'm now running into people. And I think that actually increases your overall security while you're enjoying those places. It always comes up, and I'll acknowledge it. We have had incidents on our trails. There was the attempted sexual assault in Bear Creek Park about 2.5 years ago, where the individual hit the young lady on the back of the head, but was interrupted before he could do his thing. He was later caught. He was later tried and convicted over that. We had the incident where the individual experiencing mental illness went on a stabbing spree through the Greenway Trail system. That was, again, very unfortunate, but he was apprehended very quickly. He was tried over that issue too and convicted. And, those are few and far between when it comes to our trails here in Colorado Springs. But I haven't personally seen more conflict, but I know I could see how it would occur with the increase in use. I think the one thing that we have seen are people fighting over parking spaces. And that is what it is. People will fight over. They'll do that at Walmart. They didn't have to do that at a trailhead.
All right, and I guess before we let you go, one last question. Where is your accent from? Someone wants to know.
I am, it comes and goes. It's from Arkansas, and it's one of those deals where I've talked to my parents recently, and I dropped a few IQ points. I've reverted back to my natural state. So it'll come and go. It'll probably go away here in the next week or two. But
okay.
It's Little Rock, Arkansas.
All right. Thank you. I think those are all the questions that we had.
Thank you, Wesley. We appreciate you taking your time tonight to be with us.
No, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. All right. So before we get on to our next speaker, we have another poll question for everybody to fill out. And that poll question is, Have you been a victim of theft at a trailhead parking lot? So right now we're getting our answers. Looks like everybody's pretty lucky right now. We have 3 no's so far. It's quietly going up. Looks like everybody's been pretty lucky. So everybody's been hiding all their valuables in the cars. One person got it. I personally have also had my car broken into at a trailhead at Bear Creek Regional Park, where the only thing we had in our car was a coat, and a person broke into the car thinking that there was something under the coat, which there wasn't. So for that trailhead, or for that question, we had 7 no's and 1 yes. All right, so moving on to our next speaker. Our next speaker is a park interpreter from the Garden of the Gods. His name is Bowen Gillings, and he's one of the more veteran ones out there. And he is going to continue to talk about trail safety. So Bowen, whenever you're ready.
Well, hello. Let me share my screen. And let's start this here. Now, before I get started, there's going to be a point in here where I do ask questions, and I'm going to ask if you can use the raise your hand or thumbs up feature in the bottom of Zoom to answer some of those, or just type your answers just into the Q&A, because I don't get to see your chat, but I can see when you put Q in the Q&A. So if you do that, and then if I think it was Beth or whoever contributed to the discussion previously with Officer Wilkerson, if you can just kind of read off some of those answers as we get into this. But welcome everybody. My name is Bowen Gillings. I am a park interpreter at the Garden of the Gods. This is a little bit about me, so you know who's talking to you. If you're not familiar with NAI or LNT, that's National Association for Interpretation, and the Leave No Trace is LNT. So I could be a better person at talking at you. There you go. So here we go. What we're going to talk about over the next 15 minutes is some options for you, basically to make your trail experience safer and more enjoyable. Pretty straightforward. Let's see if I can move these pictures out of the way because they're blocking my slides. All right. Let me ask you some questions as we start here. Have any of you, and this can just be, thumbs up on the screen, had a dangerous encounter on a trail? Whether that means encounter with wildlife, got trapped out there with bad weather, like seriously dangerous weather, like you're out in a hailstorm, you were on terrain you weren't prepared for, or you had a altercation with another person on the trail. Wow, it's actually more than I expected, and some of that, I'm going to tell you, makes me a little I won't say disappointed, but a little disappointed. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about ways to decrease these occurrences as we go forward, so that you can have a safer and better experience as you move forward. Think about these. I don't necessarily need you to answer me, but these next few questions I want you to think about, because you might already be doing some of the things right that I'm going to talk about what you should do to stay, what do you think you're doing properly to stay safe on the trails? Or maybe what I'm going to share with you is going to be a little enlightening, and maybe you realize that you aren't doing the right thing. How do you prepare for a hike when you go for a hike? What do you bring with you? Are you one that likes to hike alone, or do you only hike with a group or with a hiking partner? And actually think about it. What would it take on a hike? You decide to go for a hike, you're already out there, you're at the trailhead. What would it take for you to decide, I'm gonna have to alter my route, I'm gonna have to end this early, or I'm just gonna have to scrap this entirely? Just kind of make a mental list or write it down on your own or put it in the Q&A, whatever. And we'll see as we get through this, if some of the things I'm presenting to you kind of changes your own outlook on the answers to some of these questions. So when you encounter wildlife, let's get one of the things that people often worry about when hiking on their trail system is, what am I going to meet? And one of the most frequent questions we get at Garden of the Gods is about rattlesnakes, bears, mountain lions, those things. So encountering wildlife in general, there's some very, very simple guidelines that you can follow. Number one, try not to hike alone. especially if you're going to hike early in the day or late in the day, in terms of wildlife. Because if you're hiking with a friend, you tend to talk, which means you're making noise, which means you're giving the wildlife a heads up that you're in the area and they can leave if they don't want to be disturbed by you. So that's a good thing to do. Also, you're much less likely to attract a predatory animal that may be diseased or sick or desperate or wounded that might think of a single hiker as something to go after. And I caveat that by saying that is a worry people have, and it's so extremely rare that I really want you to kind of take that out of your analysis of a trail system, because just like the officer was talking about with the actual violent encounters on our parks and trail systems, they're so few and far between. They're almost negligible. In fact, I've been part of Guard on the Gods since 2008, and in terms of encounters between humans and wildlife, I can count the number that I'm aware of on one hand, and none of them were deadly. So most of them were boo-boos, and nothing more. Rule of thumb, if you're not familiar with the rule of thumb, that's how far you should be from wildlife. That means if you extend your arm full length and can cover the animal you're looking at with your thumb in your vision, you're at a safe distance. If not, you need to increase your distance just to be safe from that animal. A general rule of thumb for safety. Practice quiet observation. That just means if you see the animal, observe the animal from where you're at, or when you've moved to the safe distance. Don't try to go around and get a better shot and try, better look at it. Definitely don't try to get closer in any means. That alone is what provokes so many incidents with wildlife. And do not, and I'm talking about all wildlife, whether it's angry insects to reptiles to big mammals, don't confront them in any way. That means don't provoke, don't prod, don't try to move them with a stick, don't try to scare them out of the area, that kind of thing. And again, there'll be a caveat to this. We'll talk about how we use this coming up with two of our primary wildlife encounter concerns. If I can get there we go. Let's focus on rattlesnakes, because in my park in Garden of the Gods, we have signs all over the place. And that is one thing most people who are not from the West really worry about. And they're out there. They're out there in the hundreds. They're very, very common. The prairie rattlesnake is the only real rattlesnake we ever see in Garden of the Gods. And in this part of Colorado, it's the prominent species. How do you know you're actually looking at a rattlesnake? Because oftentimes people confuse other snakes for rattlesnakes. It sounds weird, but it happens. Number one, does it have a rattle or a rounded nub on the tail where the rattle would have been? Sometimes the rattle gets removed in a fight with, say, a scrub jay or another bird will sometimes peck away the tail, or it got caught on something. It happens. During a shed, maybe something went wrong. Also, the shape of the head. Your viper species in our part of America is going to have a triangular or diamond-shaped head on them. And our prairie rattlesnake, very, very, very obvious, narrower snout, wider behind the eyes. So look for that diamond-shaped head. Look for a slit pupil. And most of you might be thinking, oh, I don't want to get so close, I notice a pupil. But if you see a slit pupil and they reflect the light really well, a slit pupil, you're looking at a rattlesnake in this case. And very, very rough scales. I mean, if you see these scales, they're very, very rough, and they make sound when moving across gravel. All this is much different than the easily confused bull snake. Bull snakes are seen in our park all the time. They're very, very helpful. You notice the markings are fairly similar, and this helps protect the bull snake. And bull snakes will even coil up and they'll shake the tip of that tail to try to confuse predators to protect themselves, and by mimicking the rattlesnake. But realize in both snakes, when both snakes do this, both rattlesnake and bull snake, it's a protective thing. But also notice the shape of that bull snake's head. It's an oval. And notice the shape of the bull snake's eyes. They're circular pupils. All these are telling you which one you're dealing with. But at the same time, don't mess with either one. They're wild animals. Let's talk specific safety about the rattlesnake. First of all, this animal is defensive, not aggressive. If it's rattling at you, it's not because it's trying to get to you. It is coiling up to protect itself and try to scare you away. There has been a trend noticed, and I think it was even written up in one of the nature magazines, because my boss talks about it all the time, that rattlesnakes have been found to not coil and rattle as often over the past few years as they have historically, almost as if they've started to learn that if I rattle, that human's going to try and hurt me. So either way, if they do it, they're being defensive, not aggressive. And so this is a defensive animal. If you leave it alone, give it its space, it's not going to pursue you. It's not going to chase you. You're not on its menu. Rattlesnakes are much more active in the afternoon and evening. They absorb the warmth of the sunshine during the day, store up that energy, and then they tend to hunt kind of at twilight and in the evening. And that's when they hunt the most. Again, using, they have what's called pits. They can sense heat. That's what they're going for. Stay on the trail system. The trail is where most of the big things on two legs with hiking boots and poles are moving, and that's going to drive the snakes to stay away from the trail system. Early in the morning, they might come on the trail, and they often have been seen like on our sidewalks and stuff to get that morning heat, but the trail is still much safer than bushwhacking and going out there where you can't see what you're putting your feet on. And they blend in so well with our native plant life. When you're going to sit down on a bench or a log or a boulder to rest, check the base first, because oftentimes that's where they kind of like to hide, stretched out along the base there, or curled up in the shade underneath a bench. So check that first. Also, if you're on a trail system and hiking, and say you have to step over an erosion barrier or a log, step on it first before stepping over it, so that you're not stepping blind into what might be on the side. That might be one of our prairie rattlesnakes. Sturdy boots are a good defense against a snake bite. They can't really penetrate through all that leather and stuffing and get into your skin. They also sell snake gaiters, which you can wear. I would only really worry about these two things if you know you're walking through a highly dense snake area, where in our park, for example, the eastern side, actually, the open old reservoir area, the big open grassy areas, that's where you're going to find them most often. And if you're out in any open space where it is mostly open terrain, grassy, and the grass is encroaching on the sides of the trails, maybe you want to think about this. Boots that cover your ankle, definitely the best bet. If you want to go as extreme as snake gaiters for your own personal comfort, go right ahead. They are a protective layer that goes all the way up over your calf, and they're pretty thick, and a snake's fangs won't penetrate. All right, if you actually encounter a rattlesnake, you've gotten one, all of a sudden it's popped off, and you hear this rattle. Here's the first thing. Here's the three big things you need to do. Number one, freeze in place. Because so often we will react and run, and you might be running at the snake. So until you identify where it is, freeze in place. Now, this is very hard to do because the rattle is scary. When I was probably my second or third year at the park, I was walking along a trail system, being very silly. I had headphones on, very silly of me to do. And this thing popped off right on the side of the trail, and I jumped up and, legs kicking like this. Like, remember the little old lady on the Tom and Jerry cartoons? I'd get up on the chair, and that was what I was doing. So I did not freeze in place. But if you freeze in place, identify it, and then establish a safe distance. Rattlesnakes can basically strike half the length of their body in distance. So give them at least 5 feet. I tell kids in our park 2 giant steps back away from this thing. That's a safe distance. At that distance, when you give them distance, they will feel less threatened, and they will start to move away on their own. Typically, that's every encounter I've had. They will try to move away on their own. You are much bigger and scarier than they are. They will try to get away from you. Bottom line, once you've done that, leave that snake alone. Okay? Don't try to fling it out of the way with a stick. Don't try to hit it with anything, throw anything at it to scare it away. Just leave it alone, move around it at a safe distance, and carry on. I'm not going to go in depth on if you're bit and poison safety and things like that. I am not a medical professional. What I do know and recommend is stay calm. And if there's other people, hopefully if there's other people on the trail, send one person for help, or one person call on the cell phone, or you call on the cell phone for help. But try to keep your heart rate low, and stay calm is the best thing you do, and seek medical assistance. There's a whole bunch of steps, but I don't want to give them to you because I'm not a medical person. You can look them up online if you really want them in depth. All right, let's go on from small reptiles to the biggest omnivore we have in the park, and people are also worried about, because there's books out there on bear encounters, and so people are scared. I do not know of a single one happening in our park since 2008 that was a physical engagement between a bear and a human being happening in our park. Now, I might be wrong. Maybe there's one that I missed, but that's my awareness. But in that time, I've seen bears about 4 times. And I know many visitors see bears, especially down on the southern part of our park as they get close to Pleasant Valley and areas like that. And we do know we have a female with that brings cubs in and out of the park. So let's talk about bears. What we're talking about here is the North American black bear. And we're not talking about grizzlies. We don't really have grizzlies here in Colorado. If we do, they tend to be transient. But in this part of Colorado, you're going to see black bears. Black is not a color. Black is a species. Black bears can be black, brown, cinnamon, even blonde. What we see in our park tends to be kind of a cinnamon brown more than we see black. Notice that unlike the grizzlies, you're not going to have that big shoulder hump. So know you're looking at a brown bear. The rump is above the hump. There's no hump on the front shoulders, as this picture shows as well. Not that you want to get so close to see, but it is very obvious if you see them, say, climbing or you see them digging. They have very short curled claws versus the big long claws of a grizzly bear. But you'll also be able to notice that in their tracks. Black bears are not really aggressive to humans, very rarely. They tend to get out of our way as fast as they can. Pretty much the only times that they get aggressive to something like a human being is if you're between them and food, meaning there's a piece of carry-on or something around that all of a sudden you walk between them and their food source. You're between them and their cubs. You see cubs around, but you don't see mama. That's the big danger. Or you just surprise them. You've been stealthily sneaking through the woods alone, enjoying everything, being as quiet as you can so you can hear all the birds, and you sneak up on the bear and surprise the bear. That's when they might decide, hey, you're scaring me. I'm going to get you out of here. And we'll talk a little bit more about what to do if it progresses to that. All right. If you're to be safe in black bear country, sorry, this slide is loading backwards, so I'm going to do this to get us everything on there. Oh, let me go back. Back one. There we go. Oh, of course, we do this again. All right. To be safe in bear country, I'll just talk it backwards. How about that? Don't hike with headphones like I did and get surprised by the rattlesnake. If you don't hike with headphones, you can hear what's going on. It's just a great safe thing to do. Don't put headphones on. Be cautious about doing a hike, especially alone, at dusk or dawn or along loud stream systems, especially around that time when they may be coming down to get water or to get fish out of the stream. If you are approaching these areas or you're in bear country and it's at this time, clapping or shouting on a regular basis to let them know you're around is a great way to stay safe. If you're hiking with a dog, keep the dog on a leash. I know there's some dog lovers out there who I'm not leashing my puppy. He's a free being and he's going to go out and run. Well, doing that in our trails and open spaces is asking for a very bad thing to happen to your dog. Not only is it a city ordinance that you must keep your dogs on leash, it's the best thing to do for the safety of your dog. Dogs wandering because they'll run ahead, they'll run out in the trees, are more likely to provoke and or surprise a bear than a dog on leash. So please keep your dog on leash. If you're hiking in the fall, try to avoid trails that go right through their primary fall food sources. If your trail, because you've done your research, goes through lots of stands of Gamble's oak, well, they love those acorns. Or it follows the stream system that they're going to be getting fish out of, or it goes through great big berry patches. Try to avoid those trail systems, especially that time of year when they're trying to fatten up. If you're hiking with your kids, keep your kids in the middle or right behind you. Keep them close. Don't let the kids run off ahead. Don't let the kids lag behind. Keep them in the middle because a small thing is much more tempting than a big thing to a bear. If you're bringing in snacks, I don't care if it's biodegradable or not, pack it all out with you. This comes from not letting the bear associate the trail system with a food source. So take it all. It can be apple core, it could be grape stems. Keep that all with you. Put it in Ziploc bags and put it back in your pack and pack it out. So let's go back to how bears behave. Their usual response to a human is to run or climb, to get out of the way. We are a threat to them. They get away. We stand taller than even the most biggest black bear will be 5.5, maybe 6 feet if it's a really well-fed, oversized male, when they stand on their hind legs. So typically we're above them, and that's something that they don't like. So they'll try to get away. They're active in our state typically between mid-March when they come out of hibernation and through November. So just be aware that's the most active times for bears. They can smell you 5 miles away. So especially if you're somebody who showers regularly, they're going to notice that Irish Spring and not want anything to do with you because you don't smell like a prey animal to them. If you see signs of bear, you're in bear country. Or if you go to CPW's website, they'll tell you you're probably going to be in bear country through most of the Rocky Mountains of Colorado. So it's all things to be aware of. But if, like, for example, I've seen this doing the incline and coming down the bar trail, you'll see shredded logs or freshly dug earth, and you can see those claw marks where they're digging into like ant mounds because they love eating ant larvae. Lets you know you're in bear country. If you encounter a black bear, this one's going backwards too. If the bear actually approaches you, so this is the last thing. We're going to back up here. I'm sorry. Stand your ground. Don't run. Do not climb. Do not try to feed the bear to distract it. Just stand your ground. Wave your arms slowly over your head. Speak to it in a calm tone of voice. If it still is approaching you, then you can start yelling at it. Don't flail. Yell at it. Stay strong. Keep your stance. Maybe throw some small rocks at it to try to drive it away. If it starts getting close, gets approached that kind of 40 feet mark, that's like 10, 15 yards. If you can think of a football field, that's when your bear spray can start being effective. And if it starts approaching you, don't just give it a squirt and then stop. You keep spraying to drive that thing away. And if it does actually attack you, if it attacks you, don't play dead. Fight back. There's many stories, or actually factual records of people, fighting off a bear with a pen or a rock, something like, or their hiking poles. Just we went into never run or climb a tree. Leave if you see cubs and no mom, but mess them. The bear doesn't leave. The bear sometimes will stand up. This again, I'm sorry, I'm going backwards, but I just built these slides today. A standing bear is standing up to try and give you a better look at you. Doesn't mean he's threatening you. Doesn't mean the bear's threatening. It's just trying to learn who you are, what you are better. I said, wave your arms slowly overhead. Just try to make it look, hey, I am not something you normally go after for food. Leave me alone. And then if it does start coming towards you, or if you're on a narrow trail system, step off the trail, particularly if you can get downhill from it, to let it feel comfortable in leaving. Maybe it feels like you're blocking its path, blocking its exit. Give it every opportunity to leave you alone. How about encountering those humans? Now, I'm going to defer to what Officer Wilkerson said, but I will mention some of the yield rules. These are some basic yield rules. If you're out there in a multi-use trail system, and most of our parks and open spaces have multi-use trail systems. Garden of the Gods does, Ute Valley does. A lot of the trails are going to be used by horseback riders, mountain bikers, plus walk hikers, etc. Hikers and bikers, you got to yield to the horses. Bikers, got to yield to the hikers. If you're downhill, you got to yield to the people uphill because they're going to have a harder time stopping coming at you. Also, if you're the faster user, you got to yield to the slower users, which means, yes, you can pass on the left. You can tell people, hey, here I'm coming. But they don't have to get out of your way. It's your job to kind of get around them, if you will. But number one, be nice on the trail. Being nice is your best bet for diffusing any kind of encounter with another person on the trail. Smile, be friendly. If you see other hikers in the middle of a conversation or a parent talking to a kid or whatever, don't interrupt them. Just keep hiking. Just excuse yourself and move on past. Other considerations went out there to keep you safe on the trail. Number one, plan ahead. Look at what you're doing, where you're going. Understand what you expect to encounter. These are all points to think about. And some of these are going to be, subconscious because especially if you're a local, you might just know them and not necessarily have to worry about it and have to have a checklist. But these, especially if you're doing a trail for the first time, check out these topics. You know, how much elevation gain am I doing? Where's the nearest medical support? Is there going to be cell phone coverage? Am I relying on my cell phone to get me everywhere I need to go for this thing? Like I'm using all trails or whatever. Make sure somebody at home knows where you're going and knows when to expect you back, so that if you're gone longer than expected, they know to start being concerned. And please, please, please check the weather forecast. Understand what the day is supposed to bring to you and pack accordingly. You know, if the weather's going to be bad, pack for it if you're still going to do that hike, or pause, do the hike on a different day. But almost every hike in Colorado, you need to bring water, food, at least a snack, possibly, just in case you might get trapped out there because of unexpected weather. Bring your cell phone, but also bring a map. So many people rely on the digital wonder thing in their hand to get them where they want to go. And there are maps of almost every trail system, especially right around in Colorado here. You can go to REI or Mountain Chalet, a bunch of different places, or you can download them on something like All Trails and have a physical map with you, because battery might die, you might drop it, the phone, it might break, all these things. Have that map and know how to read it so that you can actually get to where you need to go. Have some wet weather gear if wet weather is expected, or it packs pretty small, so don't even worry about expected or not. It's a good thing to have on in your day pack. First aid kit, very simple at least. Have something like some Neosporin and some Band-Aids, something that might help clean out a wound. That could also help, or bacitracin or iodine, especially because that could also help if you do get a snake bite. Having a little jar of iodine does the same thing for any kind of scrape or wound you get as Neosporin does. It just also has some color to it. If you are a person who wears medical alert, or if you have a known condition of any kind, have something on you that says that. So if you are injured out there and found by another hiker, they can understand or be able to pass that on when they call in for help, that, oh yeah, this person has a heart condition, or this person has certain allergies, so that the doctors know, when they're the medics, paramedics know when they're picking you up. In addition, when you're out there, put away that freaking cell phone. Don't record your whole trip, and definitely don't play music when you're out there hiking. Most people, when they're out in the woods, aren't out in the woods because they want a Metallica concert. They want to experience nature. And nor do they want to be part of your podcast of you giving running commentary of the whole trail system as you go through. If you want to stop, take some pictures, stop, make a quick recording, and move on, that's great. But please don't hike the trail with the phone in front of you, doing whatever you're doing. If you want to do that, there's this wonderful invention called a GoPro that you can wear, and that'll do it for you. And we've all heard the stories of somebody trying to get that picture of the Grand Canyon and backing up until they're part of the Grand Canyon. Also, or wildlife. I joke about this with students, not to take selfies with our rattlesnakes. Don't do it. There's other people on the trail. Ask them to take a picture for you, something like that. But just be safe about your selfies when you're out there. So in summary, to be safe on the trail, just common sense, be respectful of our wildlife and each other, plan and prepare for your hike, and just be courteous out there on the trails. It's not nobody's on the trails looking for a bad time. Everybody's trying to look for a good time on the trails. So if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, but these are the resources I used for today's presentation. And let me get up here and stop the share.
Awesome. Thank you, Bowen. That was fascinating. Staff was texting back and forth during your presentation going, oh, wow, yeah, okay, yeah. So you had us excited. We actually had a couple questions come through on text and a couple private chats that were coming into me. But as I was checking them all off, you were answering them all. So I think you must have been reading all of our minds. So I think that we are all set. I think everything was answered as you went along. I'm looking through my list and check, check, check.
All right, great. Thanks. I'm glad. Thanks for inviting me. And I hope you all have fun, safe times out there in our trails and open spaces.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Bowen. All right. So before we get to our last speaker for this evening, we have another question. And this full question is, if you were involved in an emergency on the trail, would you be prepared? So right now the answers coming in are yes. So everybody's feeling pretty confident they can handle an emergency on the trails. We got about 15 seconds left. You know, when it comes to emergencies on the trails, there's just there's so many things that can happen. It's usually the one thing you never see coming that catches you by surprise. So our next speaker is Jason Hagan. He is the senior park ranger from Cheyenne Mountain State Park. And he is going to talk to us a little bit about how to stay safe with emergency plans and things like that. Jason.
Yeah, thanks. Let me get my screen going here. Make sure everybody can see that. Oh. Hold on. Thought I had worked this out, but maybe not. Okay, I think we're good. So yeah, I am Jason Hagan. I'm the senior ranger here at Cheyenne Mountain State Park. If you've never been to Cheyenne Mountain State Park, I'd recommend coming down. We're kind of on the southeast corner of Colorado Springs, right across from Fort Carson. About 30 miles of trails, including the Dixon Trail, which is kind of a remote trail that goes to the top of the mountain. So pretty amazing park here, pretty great resource for local folks. So we're going to talk about kind of simple emergency plans and kind of how to be a little more prepared and different things to consider if you were to be involved in an emergency. Best thing you can do is prepare, right? I think we all know that. Doing some research ahead of time, kind of knowing where you're going is going to be huge. If you're going on a longer hike or you're just starting out, you're kind of getting into being out on the trails a little bit more, it's a good idea to train a little bit, you know, get that physical fitness up a little bit. Like Bowen said, check, plan for weather. I can't stress that enough, especially in Colorado. Things change all the time from the morning to the afternoon. It can be a completely different world. So if you're a couple miles out on a trail and severe weather hits, you should be prepared for that, or best case scenario, you should know it's coming and maybe avoid the trail that day. And then obviously pack the essentials, right? So we'll talk a little bit more about that on kind of some things to consider bringing, but a lot of that's going to depend on what you're planning on hiking, how far you're going to be hiking, that sort of thing. So some things to consider taking with you: water, right? Especially in Colorado, especially these last couple of weeks, it's been really hot here. So I can't stress enough is taking a ton of water with you. Kind of the rule of thumb, what I tell people is usually a liter per hour that you plan on being out. That amounts to quite a bit of water. So just make sure you have that with you, conserve it if needed, but stay hydrated. Even the day before, if you're planning on going on a big hike the next day, really hydrate the day before, and that's going to help you out a lot. Take your cell phone, right? A lot of places, especially in the Front Range, you may have signal. So if something were to happen, you can call for help, right? Should be pretty self-explanatory. High protein snacks, pretty obvious there as well. Flashlight, even if you don't plan on being out very long, it's a good idea to have some sort of flashlight with you. I see it all the time here at the park where, you know, time gets away from people and all of a sudden that sun's behind the mountain, and before you know it, it's dark out and they don't have a flashlight. So just, you know, simple headlamp, 20, 30 bucks can really do a lot of good if you get yourself into a sticky situation. Navigation tool, compass, like Bowen said, a paper map is a great idea. Cell phones tend to fail. You got to have cell signal for a lot of these apps, that sort of thing. Batteries die all the time. So physical map, piece of paper, something with the trails that you're planning on being on are super key. So a weatherproof jacket, maybe a light rain jacket in your backpack. You know, even if the weather looks like it's going to be good, you just never know here. So a light waterproof rain jacket is a great thing to have. Multi-tool, same thing. You just never know what you're going to encounter. Those are super helpful. Basic first aid kit is a great thing to have. Simple, small first aid kit that you can use to bandage or clean out a wound or a scrape or a cut or anything like that that you might encounter. A signaling device, worst case scenario, you know, your cell phone's down, it's getting late, that sort of thing. Maybe you have a little mirror or something in your backpack that you can try to signal for help if you're kind of getting into that backcountry area. And then I threw pepper spray on there as well, kind of talking with some of the other folks that talked before me, not only for wildlife, but for other people. More for peace of mind, honestly. Kind of like they've said before, like the folks said before me, it's pretty rare for somebody to encounter a aggressive or get themselves into a situation where they would need pepper spray from to protect themselves from either an animal or another person. But just in case, a lot of people feel a little more comfortable if they have something with them to protect themselves. So not a bad idea to have a little can of pepper spray with you. Works wonders. Some other things to think about before you go out. Let somebody know where you're going, like Bowen said, and when you expect to be back, kind of the route you're going to take, where you're going to be, all that sort of stuff is key when you're going out. If you are going somewhere like for here at Cheyenne Mountain State Park, if you're going to do a big long day hike up to the top of the mountain or any other place like that, consider checking in with the visitor center. Let them know where you're going to be. We actually have logs at our trailheads too that you can put where you're planning on going. And then if we see that car in the parking lot late at night or the next day, we can go look at those logs and see if it, figure out what's going on, and maybe that is a way to help save you if you're in a sticky situation. Again, check the weather, prepare for it, or don't go. If it's going to be thunderstorms all afternoon, maybe it's not the best day to go on a 10-mile hike. So just things to keep in mind. And then start early, right? Go as early as you feel comfortable with. That way you have time to get out and back before that weather comes in. It's a lot cooler in the morning, all that sort of stuff. So another thing I kind of throw out there too for people is to kind of play the what if game. So, before you go out, while you're thinking about what you're going to be doing, what trails you're going to be going on, are you going to take your dog with you? Are you going to be mountain biking or hiking? All that sort of stuff. What possibly could go wrong with you with that day? So, and then try to prepare for that. So that a lot of times will help prevent needing an emergency plan. So kind of some things to consider if you did happen across an emergency. I mean, we're all humans. We make mistakes. Maybe we encounter somebody else that's not as familiar with the trail system, anything like that. There's just some things that we can take into consideration, some things to plan for. If you feel like you're lost, you're probably lost. So probably a good time to call. If you have cell signal, make that phone call as soon as you can, and then give the dispatch as much information as you have. Okay, all that stuff. If you were to lose signal, if your phone dies, as much information as you can give helps us find you. And time is of the essence with some of this stuff. So if you have GPS coordinates, give those. That's a great thing to have with you or to let dispatch know. But even just telling them, I'm at North Cheyenne Canyon on this trail, right? Letting them know which trail you're on, how far you've been hiking, how long you've been hiking. Give them the last location that you were at. So whether it was a trailhead or an intersection of two trails, all that stuff is super key for us trying to find you if you're lost. Okay. So as much information as you can give, key features, anything like that is helpful. Let them know what, the type of clothing you're wearing. That helps us several different ways. If you're not prepared, if you have a t-shirt and shorts and it's going to be, down into the 30s or 40s at night, that lets us know that this is probably a more serious situation and we need to really get maybe some more resources out to try and find you a little sooner. Same thing, medical conditions. If you have asthma, diabetes, if you're, prone to heart attacks, or if you're feeling anything like that, give that information as well. That again just helps us kind of escalate the situation and helps us deal with whatever's going on. Also give vehicle information, so let them know what vehicle you're driving. A lot of times, especially for here at Cheyenne Mountain State Park, we get confused with North Cheyenne Canyon all the time. And so we've had emergency calls from people saying they're lost at the park, and it turns out they're at North Cheyenne Canyon. And so if you can give the vehicle information, we can go down and search the trailheads. The emergency responders can search the trailheads, make sure that they're even looking in the right place. So that's a good thing to consider as well. And then if you do see other hikers, flag them down. If their cell phone's still working, if maybe they know their area a little better than you, get in touch with them, have them get some help if you see other people in the area. Big thing with this too, stay on the trails, right? If you're staying on the trails, it's a lot harder to get lost. If once you start wandering off trails, it's pretty easy to get lost and turned around. So please stay on the trails. And then signaling devices, we kind of talked about that already. So injured, so what happens, some things to consider if you're injured on the trail. Same thing, call for help. There's nothing wrong with calling for help. You're not going to get in trouble for calling help and not needing help, or calling for help and then realizing that you can stumble or walk your way out or something like that. We would all much rather know about a situation as soon as possible before it gets worse, rather than you wait till the last second and all of a sudden you can barely talk, you're bleeding out or something like that, and we lose you on the phone and you pass out, right? So if you get injured, there's nothing wrong with calling, letting first responders know, letting us know that you're out on the trail with a twisted ankle, okay? Something like that. Other things to consider, so assess the injury, right? So is it something that you can walk out? Is it, you fell and you skinned your elbow or your wrist, and maybe you can put a Band-Aid on it or bandage on it and walk out. That's fine, still not a bad idea to let us know. That way, if you do become worse or lightheaded or anything like that, then we know kind of that you're out there. We're going to make sure that you're safe. Or is it something that, nope, I broke my ankle, there's no way I'm walking out of here? That's good to know too. Be honest with yourself. There's nothing wrong with getting help. Like I said, we'd much rather come out and help you than it turn worse and then we come out and help you anyway. So let's see. So if you've got that first aid kit, use that to kind of clean and cover your wounds. If that's what it is, heat exhaustion, anything like that. Simple things like moving yourself into the shade and staying put can be a huge help to you. So just kind of based on the situation, take the appropriate action. Again, give your location if you're calling in for help. Let them know exactly where you are, as much information as you can. Again, what trailhead you started at, are you at North Cheyenne Canyon, Ute Valley, whatever the case may be, Cheyenne Mountain State Park. Let them know with as much detail as you can where you are. If you have GPS coordinates, great. You know which trail you're on, great. All that stuff helps us find you and get you help and as quickly as possible. Again, medical history, if you're out there and you have a heat exhaustion or a heat-related injury, a lot of those medical history, diabetes and high blood pressure, and that sort of thing, all that is good information to us, for us to have. And same thing, meds, right? If you're on any medications that might come into play in any way, that's good to let first responders know as well. And then give us an extent of your injuries. Is it a skinned knee? Is it a broken ankle? Heat exhaustion? We had one at the park last week. female was hiking the Dixon, and she got to the point where she just stopped sweating. She was getting real lightheaded, and she luckily had cell signal, and she called our visitor center and told her just to stay put, don't move, we're coming to get you. Okay, so giving us all the information and the symptoms that you're experiencing, all that helps us kind of figure out what's going on with you and allows us to get more resources to you faster. So crime in progress, I threw this in there too, just as a couple things to consider. Again, call 911. There's nothing wrong with calling in a crime in progress. We would much rather you report the crime than ignore it, trying to stay out of somebody else's business. Best thing you can do though is be a good witness. Like Officer Wilkerson said earlier, get your phone out, take some pictures, record it if you can, if it's safe to do so, that sort of thing. Videos and pictures are worth a million words, right? So be a good witness is my best advice to you. Call it in. If you're near, if they're near their vehicle and you can get a license plate off their vehicle, that helps us out a ton too with follow-up. If we have a decent license plate, it's pretty easy to follow up and find these people, depending on what the crime and stuff is. So that's pretty much all I have. Stop sharing this. Kind of ended abruptly, but does anybody have any questions or did anything come up?
Yes, we had 2 questions, but I think they're related enough that I can merge them.
Cool.
Someone wanted to know how many rescues have you had to perform at Cheyenne Mountain State Park? And then the second part of that question would be, is there a fee to have a ranger come rescue you?
No fee. That's what we're here for. That's what we get paid for. And as far as how many rescues I've done, we typically do, depending on severity, sometimes, twisted ankles, we get those every now and then. But I would say probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 a year, honestly. Yeah, it's not much at all here. Our trail system is really well marked, so people don't really get lost here. And then they're really well maintained too, so we don't have a lot of like trips and falls and that sort of thing. So it's pretty rare that we have to go out and rescue somebody, but unfortunately, just like anywhere, it does happen. So
awesome, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Jason.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so we are closing in on finishing up our evening here. We have one last question before we go to the last Q&A and just kind of a wrap up. The last poll question is, let's see, and this should be popping up any second. All right, here we go. How long have you been a member of TOSC? Are you not a member? Have you been a member for 1 to 3 years, 3 to 5 years, or 5+ years? So wow, we have a pretty healthy mix tonight. We have some that are not members. We have one that is over 5 years, one that's 3 to 5 years, and a few that are 1 to 3. I'll let that run. There we go. So it's all finished now. All right. So now we'll have the TOSC staff turn on their cameras again.
Aaron, is this where I can give my pitch to those that are not members to say you should highly consider joining TOSC, join the coalition. It not only supports the work we do in advocating for our trails, parks, and open spaces, the preservation of them. Aaron does a lot of work with preservation and stewardship, making sure that we're taking care of them. So if you love our trails, parks, and open spaces, joining the coalition for as little as $35 a year can go a long way. And you get invited to cool programs. We do some of these throughout the year, and you get invited on member hikes and bike rides, which are always extremely popular. Sorry, I didn't mean to hijack, but I just had to ask.
Oh, no problem. And Alan, do you want to talk about the bike ride you have coming up on Saturday?
Yes, absolutely. One of the benefits of being a Trails and Open Space Coalition member are the aforementioned hikes and bike rides. This Saturday, we're taking off on the Legacy Loop Tour. We haven't done one of those in quite a while, since pre-COVID times. And it'll be a 10-mile loop where we're taking in the Pikes Peak Greenway and the Shicks Run Trail, kind of giving you a preview of the connectivity that's yet to come on the northern and southern ends. We'll also be following a Pedal Our Past, which is our Bike Month activity. So the Legacy Loop is one of the premier loops of the 5 that were done. So there will be points of interest along the way that we'll be stopping at that are part of Bike Month. There'll be points of interest that we're stopping at that are part of the Legacy Loop, both the history, the kind of the current times, and then also just that preview of what's yet to come.
Awesome, Alan, thank you. And Susan, do you have any updates you'd like to tell anybody about TOSC?
Thank you so much. I'm sorry, I'm having a few technical issues and my video died, which occasionally happens.
Oh, no.
You know, just very quickly, we're excited about the TOPS initiative. We've brought it before City Council and the mayor and got a relatively positive response from all who see the value of our parks. So stay tuned. We hope to bring you some good news about what a November ballot initiative could look like.
And Erin, before we log off, if we have any of our presenters still on, I did have one question that I asked the questioner to hold to the end because it's a big question. So I don't know who's best to answer it, and I don't know that we have all the time to answer it. But someone wanted to know what can be done to remove the trash and homeless from the bike trails.
I'm just going to go ahead and jump on that one since it's kind of our lane. You know, if you've been on any of the trail systems downtown or interconnecting from the Midland to Senton to Pikes Peak Greenway, you've seen it. You've seen the encampments. We have a zero tolerance policy when it comes to blocking those bike paths and lanes. However, again, we can't be everywhere at the same time. This is my pitch. I'm now going to throw it out there. Our homeless outreach team and our downtown area response team, they love to track those leads down. You can call the homeless outreach team directly at 444-7666. You can bypass the whole non-emergency number. You go straight to their voicemail system where they check it every day. You can also email them at any time at cspdhot@coloradosprings.gov. cspdhot@coloradosprings.gov. They monitor that 24/7. They'll get back to you if you're seeing these encampments. Zero tolerance when it comes to any camping within 100 foot of a riparian zone, that being a waterway in our city. Zero tolerance. We issued tickets for mandatory court appearances on that. There are some civil liberties issues that we deal with when we mark a camp. We have to allow people time to tear it down and relocate. So it's not that we're just going to go in with a Bobcat bulldozer and start pushing over tents everywhere. We have to give people a chance to move. And we all see that. They move and they relocate to another location, and then it becomes a problem on another part of our trail. The most recent cleanup underneath the 8th Street where you're talking about was just a few weeks ago, and they're back already. It's a continuous challenge. I'll say that. The other thing I will advocate for is Mayor Souther's little pet project called GoCOS, GOCOS exclamation point. It is a website and an app for your phone that you can report any citizen concern that you might have, whether it be street lights that are out, whether it be malfunctioning traffic signals, graffiti that you're locating. I love tagging graffiti when I'm riding my bike and I see something, I will tag it and it's removed within 24 hours. There is a place under GoCOS for illegal campsites that you can report it, and it helps speed up the process of getting somebody to respond to that area. GoCOS, I mean, I know you can't see it, really simple application. And my favorite part, you can report potholes. Every time you hit a pothole, you can tag it and it gets filled. So feel free to use it. Officer Wilkerson owns about 28 potholes in this city because I tag them as frequently as I hit them.
And all those resources we just shared in the chat with you also, if you want to.
Thank you so much. Thanks for doing that. I was going to try to type and do it at the same time.
And then
I hope that answers the question. I know it sounds like we're just kicking the can. Our homeless pandemic is a major concern for a lot of citizens, but we do what we can within the confines of the law, as well as respecting people's, right to not own a home. That's essentially the truth. And you can visit some of our larger cities, such as Denver, and it will make Colorado Springs feel like it's a very minor issue if you go and visit some of those places.
Awesome. And then as far as the other half of that question about the trash, Aaron might be able to answer this a little bit more extensively, but there are several groups out there that are addressing that on a regular basis. I know, I think it's Keep Colorado Beautiful does a lot of very large cleanups. TOSC, we do cleanups. We work with businesses and do cleanups on trails. We tend not to do the huge homeless camp cleanups, but we do cleanups of trails pretty regularly. And friends groups that are around any, usually more of the soft pack trails, but they are hard pack trails. They do cleanups pretty regularly with their volunteers as well. So be on the lookout. Our website's a great place to go where you can figure out how to volunteer to do that.
I love the cat. That was a great humor moment there. Our code enforcement officers under neighborhood services, they do work in conjunction with our homeless outreach team to clean up those camps. That's another thing that can be reported on GoCOS is littering. You can report dumps or places where people have dumped stuff, and our crews will come out and they will clean that up. So they're really good at it.
Officer Wilkerson, what was the number for the hot team again? That's the one I wasn't quite fast enough to capture.
Sorry, 444-7666.
444-7666.
Yeah, and now you're making me question that. Yes, it's 444-7666. I had to double check.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I think that is all we have for tonight. So if you are not a member of TOSC already, you can make your way over to join the coalition at our website. I encourage everybody to like and follow our Instagram and Facebook pages. That's where we get the bulk of the information out, as well as our e-blast that comes out every morning, every Wednesday morning. So thank you again for logging in tonight. Good night.